Let's depict the Lewis structure of C2H2, also known as acetylene. We'll use 5 simple steps to accurately depict the Lewis structure of C2H2. First, we'll draw a rough skeleton structure for C2H2. Next, we'll illustrate the chemical bonds between each atom. In the third step, we'll determine how many lone pairs each atom has and mark them accordingly. Then, we'll verify whether the octet rule or duet rule is satisfied for the atoms. Finally, we'll calculate the formal charges for each atom and aim to achieve a stable Lewis structure with the smallest possible formal charges. To draw a rough sketch of C2H2, we first need to calculate the total number of valence electrons and then identify the central atom. The total number of valence electrons in C2H2 can be determined by adding the valence electrons of each individual atom. Each carbon atom belonging to group 14 has 4 valence electrons, while each hydrogen atom from group 1 has 1 valence electron. Since C2H2 contains 2 carbon atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms, the total number of valence electrons is calculated as 4 multiplied by 2 plus 1 multiplied by 2, which equals 8 plus 2. Therefore, the molecule C2H2 has a total of 10 valence electrons. To determine the central atom in C2H2, we consider placing the element with the lower electronegativity at the center. In C2H2, hydrogen cannot be the central atom, because the central atom typically forms bonds with at least 2 other atoms. Since hydrogen generally forms single bonds due to its single valence electron, it is unsuitable for this role. Therefore, in C2H2, either carbon can serve as the central atom. Here, we choose the left carbon as the central atom and sketch C2H2 with 2 carbon atoms in the center and 2 hydrogen atoms arranged around them. 2 electrons represent a single chemical bond. First, we will use 2 electrons and place them in the middle between the 2 carbon atoms, representing a chemical bond. Next, we will use another 2 electrons and place them on the left side to indicate a chemical bond between the left carbon and the left hydrogen atom. Similarly, we will use 2 more electrons and place them on the right side to represent a chemical bond between the right carbon and the right hydrogen atom. In this way, out of the total 10 valence electrons, we have used 6 electrons to form 3 chemical bonds, leaving 4 electrons unutilized. Lone pairs consist of electron pairs that are not involved in chemical bonding. Keep in mind that 2 electrons form a single lone pair. Since there are 4 unutilized electrons, 2 lone pairs can be created and represented on the structure. It's also important to note that carbon, as a period 2 element, can hold only up to 8 electrons in its valence shell. In contrast, hydrogen, being a period 1 element, is limited to just 2 electrons in its outer shell. Another important point to remember is to always start by marking lone pairs on the outer atoms before placing them on the central atom. In C2H2, the 2 outer hydrogen atoms do not receive any lone pairs, as they cannot hold more than 2 electrons in their valence shells. Therefore, the lone pairs must be distributed between the 2 carbon atoms. The right carbon, being the outer atom, is assigned 2 lone pairs. Meanwhile, the central carbon on the left does not receive any lone pairs, as only 2 pairs are available to distribute in the structure. The current structure of C2H2 shows that the outer atom, the right carbon, satisfies the octet rule. Each hydrogen atom also forms a duet. However, the central atom, the left carbon, does not yet satisfy the octet rule. Therefore, we will work on completing the octet for the left carbon. It's important to remember that carbon is a period 2 element and cannot hold more than 8 electrons in its valence shell. The left carbon already has 4 valence electrons and requires 4 more to complete its octet. Therefore, we will transfer 2 lone pairs from the right carbon atom to the left carbon atom to form a chemical bond. The octet rule is satisfied for both carbon atoms, while the duet rule is fulfilled by the 2 hydrogen atoms. Next, we'll calculate the formal charges to assess the stability of the structure. This is the formula we can use to calculate formal charges for the C2H2 Lewis structure. Formal charge equals valence electrons minus, non-bonding electrons minus, half times bonding electrons. Enter the necessary data and place the values to derive the formal charges for each specific atom. For each carbon atom, valence electrons equals 4, non-bonding electrons equals 0, and bonding electrons equals 8. So, the formal charge will be equals 4 minus 0 minus half multiplied by 8, which equals 0. For each hydrogen atom, valence electrons equals 1, non-bonding electrons equals 0, and bonding electrons equals 2. So, the formal charge will be equals 1 minus 0 minus half multiplied by 2, which equals 0. The formal charges of each carbon and hydrogen atom are indicated on the structure. Since the formal charge on every atom is 0, the current structure can be considered stable. Therefore, this is the stable Lewis structure of C2H2. To represent a bonding pair, we draw a single line between the atoms. As shown in the structure, there are 3 pairs of electrons between the 2 carbon atoms, so we draw 3 lines between them to indicate a triple bond. Between each carbon and hydrogen, there is 1 pair of electrons, so we draw 1 line between them on each side to represent a single bond. In this way, the C2H2 Lewis structure shows the 2 carbon atoms connected by a triple bond, with each carbon atom further bonded to 1 hydrogen atom by a single bond. That's the Lewis structure of C2H2. If this explanation was helpful, press the like button, share this video with others, and subscribe for more chemistry content.